The internationalization of the Chinese currency is not about the value of its currency anymore. This is about the function of its currency. How does it work? How do you use a renminbi? And we're going from a closed capital account to an open capital account, that it could be used for trade finance, that it could be used as an investable instrument. And this is a whole new phase, very exciting for the foreign exchange markets. The Chinese have swap agreements with 19 countries, totaling about 2 trillion. 10% of all trade finance now is settled actually in renminbi. We're seeing investable instruments, the dim sum market, which is the bond market, opening up. So there's a host of different elements, legislation, changes that show that we're on the path to internationalization. It doesn't happen overnight. This is not karate, this is Tai Chi, slow, methodical changes that increase one's health. People ask the question about the dollar and its status as the reserve currency of the world, and it remains dominant. One mustn't forget that 85% of currencies on one side or the other, a dollar is traded. And this is of a 5 trillion a day foreign exchange market. So if you want to trade from Singapore to South Africa, let's say, you have to sell Singapore dollars, buy US dollars, sell US dollars, and buy rand. So actually, you wanted nothing to do with the dollar on that day, but actually you bought and sold it twice. One day, the depth and liquidity of the renminbi will be such that the liquidity of the renminbi with Singapore will be deeper than the US dollar. One day, the liquidity of the renminbi will be deeper with South Africa as a commodity currency than the United States. So a day will come where you sell Singapore by renminbi, sell renminbi by rand. That'll happen. That's not a choice of a government. That's a choice of a market through the structure of liquidity, through trade in goods and services, through trade in investable instruments. That day is coming, and when that happens, then the renminbi truly rivals the dollar. Would you like the renminbi to be a safe haven currency that you could put money in? Yes. Would you like the dollar as well? Yes. In fact, bring on another one if we could. And so I think the world's very happy to absorb another reserve currency. We've had the euro as a baby brother reserve currency. Hasn't quite worked out the way everyone would have liked. There's plenty of room for another currency in the world, and I don't think it'll diminish the dollar, and I think it'll only enhance the structure of global financial markets. This currency has appreciated 30% against the basket of currencies since 2005. The trade surplus used to be 8, 9, 10% of GDP. It's now 2, 3%. The reserves are rising exponentially. They're no longer. So this is a currency much more at fair value than it's ever been before. There's no evidence, there's no reserve accumulation anymore the way it was. This is the nature of the currency, and the value has changed. And this idea that it needs to be a free-floating currency, otherwise it doesn't show its true value, that's slightly unfair, because we're seeing some emerging market countries starting to put special measures on to stop their currencies from strengthening. We've seen the Swiss put on a floor to stop their currency from strengthening. No one cries foul. This happens all the time, manipulations in the currency markets. But what I would say is the rest of the world is making their currencies less free-floating, and the Chinese are making their currency more free-floating. So I think sometimes there's unfair criticism leveled at the Chinese currency, and I think it's a very old-fashioned argument to say that this currency is extremely undervalued. The role of Hong Kong in the internationalization of the renminbi has been pivotal. It's where everything starts. But I would say we're moving away from that. We've seen George Osborne talking about London as the next renminbi financial centre. Well, it is already. You can already deal in renminbi in a multitude of currencies in London. We've seen dim sum, that means a bond issued in London in renminbi by HSBC. This has happened in London. For European corporates, they need London. They don't want to deal in Hong Kong time. And same for some of the US, wants to deal in London time, not Hong Kong time. So this is the globalization of the currency on a 24-hour basis. It's not whether you need Hong Kong or whether you need London. You need Hong Kong and you need London. This is the internationalization of a currency that's going to operate 24/7 like every other currency does. In fact, instead of internationalization, you could call it a normalization of the currency. If you're a company, why should you care is the question. Why does this matter to you? First of all, if you want assets and liabilities to match, you might want to issue in some bonds in renminbi. Now you can issue a dim sum bond, which is one point. The second thing is you might have a renminbi price that is a much more of a discount to dollar price, because if a manufacturer gives you a dollar price It may have in it various costs associated with having to do that business. Here you can go into the market, get renminbi, and say to someone, how much do you want in renminbi for this? They give you the amount of money and you pay them in renminbi. Often you'll get a discount for doing that, for taking the financial pain away from another company, but it's something that you want to do because it makes sense for you. You may want to hedge your renminbi risk, so you want to use the forward markets. So if you're dealing in China, you're doing business in China, do you want to manage the currency risk yourself? Yes, you may. If you do, that option is available. If you don't, you can pay it in the price and someone else can manage it for you. It gives you choice. So it means a lot for the corporate sphere in the sense that they can do various aspects of business in China, but do it in a currency that they choose to do it in. Just remember that trade flows, trades in goods and services, are 25 trillion a year. And in that aspect, China is already a reserve currency. But financial flows are 5 trillion a day. They swamp trade flows. And it's the financial aspect of the currency that's opening up. And that is absolutely enormous. It's big, it's good for business, it's good for London, and it's good for the corporate sphere to have choice. Already 10% of trade finance is invoiced and paid in renminbi. So it is opening up, it's broadening up. This is the flowering of a new currency.